I would love to be a reader, but I just can't focus on books because of my ADHD, or I just can't focus, period. This is something I've heard people say many times. And trust me, I get it because I have ADHD myself. I know how badly you want to click away from this video right now because of this awkwardly long opening shot. I'll cut away in just a minute to tell you about 5 strategies I personally use to read a lot of books, even though I have a Have you ever sat down to do a task, it's something that you need to do, and you followed that classic ADHD recommendation of removing distractions, but even still, your mind is just screaming at you to put down what you're doing and literally do anything else? Pick up your phone, turn on the TV, or even go do some inconsequential task like folding your laundry? Yeah, that's me literally every time I sit down to read. I've found that if I push through the first 5 to 10 minutes, I almost always break through a wall and my mind finds itself in a nice rhythm where I can concentrate on the book in my hand. I think it's sort of like the wall runners talk about. The beginning of the run is painful, but eventually those feel-good endorphins start pumping and you find your groove. Also, running. But this tip is only helpful to a point because it brings up another question. How do we survive those first 5 to 10 minutes? When we think of removing distractions, we often think of removing stimulus. But in the case of people with ADHD or those who simply struggle to focus, silence can actually be distracting. It's like a playground for our intrusive thoughts to come in. So my next tip is for you to add some type of background sound, whether that's white noise or even music. I've found that adding white noise like a fan or even a dryer running in the background has a big impact. I'll listen to music if I'm really struggling to focus, choosing songs that have no lyrics or vocals and feature repetitive and rhythmic beats. You can find my personal focus playlist down below. But sound is only one part of the sensory experience. What else can we do to create a more focus-friendly environment? In art and photography, there's a technique called chiaroscuro. This is where there are extreme contrasts between light and dark. Artists use this because the human eye is naturally drawn to the brighter areas. So if an artist wants you to focus on a specific point in the image, they'll use this technique. We can use this concept in our reading. By reading in a very dark room, our visual distractions will be removed. Using a reading light, it will make it easier to focus on the book in front of you as the book is the only thing that's illuminated. But even adding some white noise or removing visual distractions can be like bringing a knife to a gunfight with your ADHD if you aren't reading the right books. So as somebody who struggles to focus, how do you choose the right books? I don't know about you, but one of the things that triggers distraction for me is seeing a huge mental mountain for me to climb. And this can apply to books in 2 ways. First is a very long book. I start to get anxiety about getting distracted while I'm reading it, which is only going to prolong the reading experience and then offer up more opportunities for me to get distracted again. But choosing a shorter book isn't always the answer. Have you ever been reading a book and you flip the page and you see nothing but absolute walls of text? I'm talking about page after page with barely so much as a paragraph break. Books like that are not a great choice if you're really struggling to become a reader. Knowing that I'm going to have a long stretch of reading without any mental relief does start the process of those intrusive thoughts creeping in, telling me to just go pick up my phone and look at social media. So choosing a book that's not only the appropriate length, but does have shorter chapters can be a great way to build a reading habit if you are easily distracted. Make sure to subscribe to my channel because in my next video, I'm going to be covering my favorite books with short chapters. And now we've arrived at my final piece of advice, and this is probably something you haven't heard before. At least I've never heard anybody else talk about this. ADHD isn't just about being easily distracted. People with ADHD also tend to hyperfixate on things as well. Have you ever learned about a new topic and you just suddenly become obsessed with it and you're thinking about it 24/7 and putting off all of your responsibilities so you can geek out on this one thing? You know, for example, like starting a Bookstagram or BookTube account so you can make videos about books on the internet. We can harness that hyperfixation to become obsessed with books, and I'll give you an example. Last year, I tried to read Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace because I wanted to see what all of the hype was about. I got about 150 pages into this 1,000-page behemoth, and it just wasn't clicking for me. I was not in the mood to read it, and I put it on hold until I fell down a rabbit hole of listening to interviews with Wallace himself. I was so intrigued by the way he answered questions about books and about life and the things he had to say, it made me really interested in his art, and it made reading his magnum opus an experience I looked forward to rather than shied away from. So to trigger that hyperfixation and use it to your advantage, I encourage you to do a little bit of a deep dive on the authors of some of these books that you want to read. I guarantee it's going to make reading these books a lot easier and more enjoyable. So I really want to know, what's a book you've always wanted to read, but your inability to focus has always kept you from reading it?